At 8:45 p.m. on October 2, 2025, deep within Russia's industrial core, while Vladimir Putin delivered his address at the Valdai Discussion Club, a swarm of Ukrainian drones was closing in only 10 minutes from transforming a billion-dollar plant into a fiery spectacle. This target, the Azad chemical plant, was the lifeline of Russia's war industry, producing the explosive compounds for nearly every shell fired at the front. Here's where logic bends. A drone of this size shouldn't be able to fly more than 600 miles, and by all calculations, the swarm should have crashed hundreds of miles earlier. But the Ukrainians planned ahead. These FP-1 drones weren't flying solo, they were sustained by an unseen power link, a chain of mother drones transmitting energy mid-air, extending their reach beyond anything Russian engineers imagined possible. The operation was timed perfectly to coincide with the exact moment when Russian commanders would be least alert during Putin's live televised speech. Yet, to reach their prize, the drones first had to slip past the perimeter defense, a system so unreliable that its own operators mockingly nicknamed it the refrigerator alarm, famous for false alerts rather than real ones. Russia had a billion-dollar fortress. Ukraine had cheap drones, an invisible energy web, and a flawless grasp of psychology. It was brains against brute force. At 8:51 p.m., the lead FP-1 pierced the 40-mile detection zone. Inside a bleak Russian outpost, the infamous alarm finally screamed to life. The system was, ironically, working exactly as designed. But the software made a deadly mistake. When it saw several slow, low-flying blips, it decided they were nothing more than a flock of geese drifting through the haze. That's the fatal flaw the Ukrainians counted on. The radar was built to detect screaming missiles from the stratosphere, not a swarm of low-crawling drones just 200 feet above ground. Its filtering system carried a built-in 3-second delay, 3 seconds, to decide whether a signal was a threat or just noise. For missiles, that's an eternity. For drones, it's a golden window. As the radar hesitated, doubting its goose theory, the lead drone unleashed its first trick. It scattered a burst of microflares, mimicking the radar signature of a passenger jet. While the system scrambled to interpret this phantom giant, the remaining drones dove sharply, hugging the rolling valleys of the Ural foothills and using the very curvature of the Earth as their shield. Their onboard AI instantly recalculated the entire formation's path faster than it takes a Russian operator to sip his coffee. Left, right, twist, roll. The radar now chased a ghost. They'd broken through the perimeter cleanly, a perfect success. But that triumph was brief. The chaotic radar signals had just awakened the next layer of Russian defense. This next line of defense didn't rely on radar, it struck with pure electromagnetic fury. At 8:53 p.m., the operator's screen turned to static snow as a TK-25E electronic warfare pod blasted the sky with enough electromagnetic power to fry a smartphone from a mile away. GPS vanished. Control links died instantly. For any ordinary drone 1,000 miles from home, that would be the end mission failed. But Ukraine had anticipated this. The moment the link was cut, the FP-1's onboard AI switched to ghost mode. While Russia attacked the signal, the drone stopped listening entirely. They began navigating through visual memory, comparing the terrain their cameras saw in real time to satellite maps stored inside. Like a driver using a paper map after losing radio contact, these drones knew the way by heart. And they weren't done yet, the swarm had another move waiting. The swarm executed its next pre-programmed maneuver. One drone broke formation, climbed 500 feet, and self-detonated a deliberate sacrifice. The powerful electromagnetic pulse overloaded the Russian jammer, forcing it to reboot. In that fleeting window of chaos, the first mother drone of the Ghost Relay made its decisive move. Launched hours earlier from a disguised van near Kursk, the first mother drone soared to altitude and fired a tight beam of radio energy 15 miles wide, striking the lead FP-1. Its battery, nearly drained, flickered back to life. It had just taken its first long-distance sip of power, reconnecting briefly with the operator's control signal. The drones had breached the electronic wall, but that sacrificial blast hadn't gone unnoticed. It was a real explosion, not just an electronic flare. On the ground, Russian patrols spotted the flash. By 8:55 p.m., heavy machine guns shredded the sky with tracer fire, a chaotic response born of panic as soldiers realized they were under attack. A mobile surface-to-air missile unit scrambled into position, its turret creaking as it searched for a target. This should have been the moment brute force crushed cheap technology, but human reaction time betrayed them. The commander, just torn away from Putin's speech, barked orders into a radio while his crew fought to get a lock. It took the SAM crew 10 full seconds to acquire a firing lock, and Ukraine's entire strategy was built around that fatal 10-second window. Just as the missiles locked on, the swarm executed a final sleight of hand. One drone peeled off, climbing sharply and lighting up Russian radar, serving as a willing decoy. While the SAM crew chased the bait, the true strike force dropped low, streaking toward the plant at treetop level, dodging tracer fire like trained athletes. Their AI flight controls made micro-corrections every 50 milliseconds, thinking faster than the bullets themselves. As their batteries drained from high-G maneuvers, a second mother drone, disguised as a drifting weather balloon 60 miles away, activated the next link in the Ghost relay. The second mother drone released a fresh surge of energy into the swarm, refueling them for the final dash. The SAM batteries had wasted their shots on empty sky, and the attack formation was now racing toward the chemical plant just above the treetops. Inside the facility, new alarms began to wail. By 8:57 p.m., Russian commanders finally grasped the nightmare. Their drones, their jammers, their missiles had all failed. Yet the Ukrainian strike kept advancing. The only logical conclusion: the attackers must have a hidden energy source. A sharp deduction, but 5 minutes too late. Hundreds of miles away, a long-range radar picked up a faint trace, one of the Furia M mother drones hovering high in the stratosphere. Instantly, an Orlan 10 reconnaissance drone was diverted to intercept it, hoping to sever the swarm's lifeline. The Russians thought they had found the Achilles heel, but they couldn't have known the truth. The Ghost relay wasn't a simple chain, but a self-healing network. Disabling one link meant nothing. It was like unplugging a single wire in a house powered by a dozen circuits. As the Orlan 10 closed in on its target, the Ukrainian AI prepared its final trick. The Furia M didn't flee. Instead, it projected a false energy beam, a ghost signal that lured the Orlan into a pointless chase. While the Russian drone hunted the mirage, the network's AI rerouted power through alternative channels. The Russian system took 10 seconds to calculate. The Ukrainian network needed less than 2. The final pulse of energy came from the last Furia M in the chain, launched an hour earlier from a hidden site just 60 miles from the plant. The FP-1 attack drone, seconds away from impact, soaked up the charge batteries back to full. Now nothing stood between them and the target except the plant's emergency chemical safeguards. The battle shifted from digital to chemical. Inside the AOT plant, terrified workers slammed emergency buttons. Massive safety valves began to grind shut, each weighing hundreds of pounds. Foam flooded the pipe junctions, a final desperate line of defense meant to stop a chain reaction. Walls of steel and foam were supposed to save the plant, but Ukraine already knew the system's flaw. Satellite thermal scans had revealed every pipe and valve, including their exact closing times. Those heavy steel gates needed 20 seconds to seal a 20-second window Ukraine planned to exploit. The lead FP-1 was now only 1,500 feet out impact in less than 3 seconds. No chemical foam could stop a molten copper jet moving 15,000 miles per hour. Guided by the final pulse from the Furia M, the drone made one last micro-adjustment and ignored the rising white cloud. Gunfire erupted, but the FP-1 ignored it. Everything narrowed to one objective: the imperfect weld joint on the ammonia pipeline, the weakest link in the system. Its AI locked onto that single discolored seam with surgical precision. The factory's defenses were 17 seconds too late. The target wasn't the pipe itself, it was a single discolored weld seam, a flaw detected by Ukrainian analysts from 400 meters above. On the ground, a lone security guard emptied his AK-74 into the darkness, a final futile act of defiance. His bullets vanished into the night. The billion-dollar factory could no more dodge than a mountain could flinch. The drone needed just 50 milliseconds to make its fatal correction. The white foam surged up to fill the frame. The safety valve was still grinding shut too late. At 8:59 p.m., the FP-1 made contact. This wasn't an explosion, it was physics in motion, a lesson delivered at light speed. The shaped charge detonated, unleashing what engineers call the Monroe effect. The blast didn't spread outward, it collapsed inward, crushing a solid copper cone inside the warhead. In less than a microsecond, the cone inverted, transforming into a jet of molten metal moving at 15,000 miles per hour. That jet sliced through the half-inch thick steel pipe as effortlessly as a needle through paper. The superheated copper ignited the pressurized ammonia inside the pipe. A secondary explosion tore the line apart from within, transforming Russia's most vital explosive ingredient into its most spectacular blunder of the year. The Kremlin's narrative would be pure denial, blaming a technical failure, a refrigerator blast. Anything but the truth. But the fire consumed more than a factory, it devoured the lifeblood of Russia's frontline artillery. The 3 million tons of nitrogen fertilizer produced. They weren't meant for crops, they fueled explosions. Ukraine hadn't just hit a building, it had struck the heart-pumping ammunition to the entire war effort. The ripple effect was brutal. With the ammonia supply gone, no more explosives could be produced. And without explosives, the cannons would fall silent, not from a lack of targets, but from a lack of shells. As Putin spoke live about Russia's invincibility, this inferno painted the sky with a fiery fact check visible across the Urals. The illusion of a secure Russian heartland shattered. Locals filmed the inferno in 4 kelvins and uploaded it to Telegram. The bear had been burned in its own den. Its humiliation spread faster than the flames themselves. The brilliance of Ukraine's strike wasn't only in destruction, it forced Moscow into a strategic checkmate. Russian generals now faced an impossible dilemma. Should they pull advanced Pantsir air defense systems from the front to guard factories deep inside Russia, or leave their industrial core unprotected? Every battery redeployed to shield the Urals would open new gaps for Ukrainian jets to exploit at the front lines. This single low-cost drone strike had forced Russia to turn its own shield into a sword that cut itself. A few $1,000s in modified drones and clever planning had neutralized a billion-dollar asset and created a strategic crisis for a superpower. The lesson was merciless. Modern war isn't won by the size of your army, but by the size of your ideas.